welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel.
And I'm Jaren Decker.
And we'll be your host today. Today on Anything Joe's, we are it's pretty light on news, and that's good because I actually wanted to spend some time discussing the final G.I. Joe issue at IDW, and maybe a brief look back at some of the stuff that they did. IDW first started publishing in 2008. They acquired the license from Devil's Due in what we are told now it was a little bit of not a dirty trick, but they basically just did not want Devil's Due to have the license anymore. There was a lot of miscommunication with what they were doing with it, and I guess they just didn't see eye to eye. So at the end of 2007, DDP lost the rights, and that was given to IDW. For reference, since we're going through a similar experience, IDW picked up the license in January, and they officially announced it in May of that same year. So if we're looking for an announcement on when 301 is coming, if this is kind of a guideline, it could take, up to 5-6 months maybe before they're allowed to even announce it. When IDW started, they basically just threw everything away. It's a complete reboot, and they essentially ignored everything that had come before it. They started over, basically, which is not something that has been explored in great depth in the comics world. And, up to this point, the Devil's Due was not considered an alternate reality until later on when Larry basically kicked it out the door. But up to that point, we were still reading in that same universe. So nothing other than a couple of like side stories or that type of, a little bit of exploration here and there. The IDW is the first guys that were like, let's just start over. And they did. They changed tons of stuff. They were retelling origins. They were trying to make things like come together a little bit more, I guess, cohesively compared to Larry, who was constantly getting bombarded with new characters and having to kind of worm them in. These guys were able to look back and kind of take it from a new angle. And I was resistant on the reboot just because you have invested so much time in it, you hate the idea of starting over. But over time, I have really grown to like the IDW continuity. I think that it falters at sometimes, but there are definitely, once you adjust to the newness of it and the changes that they've made, there's a lot of solid stuff that came out of it. And I'm not even talking about this like the side story stuff that like G.I. Joe Cobra run that's got Chuckles that everybody loves. They built from the bottom up, and I hoped over time people would kind of go along with them. And sure enough, like I said, over time I really started getting into it. By the time they had worked up to the death of Cobra Commander, and then they have a big civil war basically to decide who will be the new Cobra Commander, it was pretty clear that they were willing to take chances that you really hadn't seen in a long time. There was a time where Hasbro simply wouldn't let certain characters, you couldn't do anything to them. They were untouchable. So it was cool that they were able to take some chances. And it went through a lot of evolutions. We went through the first wave and we saw a bunch of different, they did a secondary origins, which was kind of supposed to fill in some of the background of this new world since there were so many missing gaps. They did, like I said, I already mentioned G.I. Joe Cobra, which I do think was one of the first miniseries that really got them a lot of attention. They did some follow-ups to that because it was so popular. World War Z author Max Brooks did a Hearts and Minds series that was really good, just focusing on individual characters. And they did a lot of crazy universal tie-in stuff. They had a story called Infestation, which was like, what if zombies took over basically all the properties they owned. They were in TMNT, it was in Transformers, it was in G.I. Joe, it was in Ghostbusters. So that was pretty cool to see the universes tied together. We didn't know then that basically this universe would end in a similar fashion when they merged all the universes into into a selection of books. The Revolution series was it was Transformers, it was Action Man, it was Mask, it was Rom, it was Micronauts, it was G.I. Joe, and they were all together, and it was just like how there was basically just eternal conflict. None of them really knew each other, so there was a lot of in-house fighting, and then of course you've got a whole separate core team of villains that were working in different ways. They did a good job too. They mixed it up a lot. You'd see like Countdown would be in a ROM book as an astronaut, or Action Man was teamed up with a Transformer. the G.I. Joes had a Transformer actually on their team, so they were trying to like mix and match a little bit. I was also fairly hesitant against this universe, but there's a lot of really cool ideas that came out of it because it was almost like a multiverse of madness idea where you'd see like a female Storm Shadow, or they were just doing whatever they wanted. And I think it was a pretty good idea. It was unfortunate because it became the sole title remaining in that particular universe. So when it came to an end, it was lacking a little bit of that like G.I. Joe independence. It felt more like a solid supplemental book, a la, special missions, something that would run alongside a regular continuity book. But because it didn't have that, I feel like that hurt its chances of like surviving. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that they've been publishing G.I. Joe for over 10 years. It's weird to look back at it and think, oh man, I mean, they really did do the heavy lifting for a bulk of time where nobody else was publishing anything. And like I said, a lot of stuff came out of it that we would have never seen with another publisher. And there's some hits and there's some flops. That's just how it is. They can't all be zingers. I'll miss IDW. You never know with a new publisher if the rules are going to change. But I think these guys had a lot of freedom, and it worked out well. The creativity really shined through. But anyway, that's the IDW run. We're talking about the Real American Hero. When they brought Larry back to start Real American Hero back up, it was a huge deal, right? Everybody, we didn't really think that continuity was ever going to see the light of day again, so it was extremely exciting. And it's exceptional to look back on it now and say, it almost went the same length, as the original Marvel run, 155 issues, and we've got almost exactly that amount, just shy of just a few. So, it's crazy that the continuation of the universe is now as long as the original one was. I don't feel like the pacing, and I mean, you can go back and look at any of the comic book issues we've done to this point, there's so much dialogue. Things move so fast and things happen so aggressively. And if you go back and read them now, you might have to read 4 or 5 issues to get that much content because things just move slower in comics, it seems like. But I don't fault that. I'm glad it exists, and I'm excited to talk about the final issue today, despite the fact that I do have some issues with how it turned out overall. I think that it's still something to be celebrated. Now, Jaren, you're in an interesting position because we've been reading from the very beginning, but simultaneously at a certain point, you jumped on to what was going on in the real book as well. Can you give me a brief idea of where you started reading and how much you've read up to this final issue?
So I jumped on right in the 270s and then have been like hit or miss. We've talked about our comic book shop before, so I've missed quite a few issues. But been kind of reading in and out of that. And then I've picked up the last 5. So I think I've missed the first part of this series of the 6-parter or 5-parter. So probably the last 4. It's been interesting. It's kind of fun seeing the ending and knowing the beginning, but missing everything in the middle.
Yeah, I could see that. I was just going to ask if you could you have a unique perspective because of the way you're reading. How do you feel when you go back and read these books, when we read these books from the 80s and then you read the books that are coming out currently? Like, does it feel substantially different, knowing that it's the same author, the man that has lived it basically his whole life? Do you think his writing style has changed a lot between, in all this time?
I don't think Larry himself has changed. I think he's had to make some adaptations for modern comics. I think there is much more happening in the modern books, at least in my opinion. And I feel like it was he had a little bit more time to breathe in the older books, which as I read the new ones and then we're going back and reading the old ones, I find myself gravitating towards the old ones, which I did not think was going to be the case. But just because, I don't know, something about it feels, I guess in a way it's almost more like romanticized, like the connection with the characters is a lot different. But it's also probably different because I'm going back and reading something from 40 years ago as opposed to something coming out now. I definitely have enjoyed these issues. We'll get more into what I thought of the 300 later, but I don't regret picking them up. I enjoy reading them, but I definitely do find myself more excited when we go back and read an old one.
Do you feel motivated to do any more reading? Like, or do you think you'll start working your way backwards, or Or are you going to just kind of wait?
I was excited for 300 because I thought, okay, we're going to get into something new and then I can jump on and I won't be missing. And time will tell what goes on with that. I don't know how, honestly, I've really considered it, maybe going back and reading from when maybe Larry returns. That way I don't ruin any of the surprises for me from the early issues, but I don't know. I haven't honestly put too much thought into that just because I've been taking it one at a time, and we'll see what happens with the new 301 or whatever comes next.
Okay, so let's dive into this issue. I will be up front, of course, and say that this is going to be heavy spoilers. We're not holding anything back. If you haven't read it, you're waiting to read it, or you're a trades collector, I mean, I respect all of that, but I'm giving you warning now. We're putting everything on the table. Let's start with the cover. So, cover A, there are multiple covers to this book. Looking at the back, as someone that has been trying to track these covers down, I'm looking at 3, 6, 7 covers, and also the Nerf cover, which isn't pictured because it's still not out at this time. The Jamie Sullivan cover is obviously the most recognizable cover of this lot because it is, record breaking. It's got the most characters on the cover. I mean, it's an impressive piece of work. So if you're not familiar with the concept behind this, Jamie drew every single character individually, then digitally combined them all. I really do like this cover quite a bit. I mean, it's hard not to like something that has everybody on it. And I think it's really fun to look through a cover like this and be like, how many of these guys can I name? Or who don't I recognize so I can try to figure out, where are they from? When did they come out? My only real complaint about this cover is that when these figures were digitally combined, especially as you get to the top half of this cover, it starts to lose a little bit. You can't really, in the lower half, you can't really see the background at all. But in the top half, there you can see between a lot of characters' legs, and there's no detail there at all. It doesn't look like there's stairs. It's just like a flat color. I feel like it loses a little bit there. Plus, there's a lot of characters that are just striking weird poses, like they're posing for a photograph as opposed to I don't know. Bottom half guys look like they're taking a class photo. Top half guys look like they're mad because they didn't get invited to the lower rows. DJ's back there come on, guys. I can't make it in the top 3? No, you cannot. Jaren, if you notice anything unusual, have you seen anything about this cover that caught your eye or you thought was interesting? Did you have, what are your feelings about this cover in particular?
So I love this cover. I think for the same reasons that you had said. My eyes always gravitate to Clean Sweep because that's the original art that I bought from Jamie Sullivan.
Nice.
So for everyone who didn't know, Jamie Sullivan did an auction for all of his original sketches, and he had he had as many characters as you see here. He had that many, but I got Clean Sweep because I love that character. Who is the character to the top right of him? The gray with the red accents?
Gray with red. Oh, that is Sightline.
Sightline looks like he shouldn't exist in that space. The tiers, the levels, it looks like he should be falling off.
I can tie this together for you, Jaren. It's exciting because you are starting to learn enough that I can tether this to other teachable moments. Do you remember when we went to the Kentuckiana and I bought that figure that was supposed to be given away in tribute to Gary?
Yes.
That's that guy. That's Sightline.
Okay. Cool character, but
he was incorporated into the comic briefly, even though his true face in the comic does not look like Gary. But he's actually a full-on member of the team. They made a non-fan created Sightline. He came with one of the 2-pack vehicles. Also, unfortunately, doesn't look as good as this figure did. Doesn't have the same design, but still cool that he breached the from fan concept and fan giveaway to legitimate Hasbro character, because they had come out and said that we don't name them after real people anymore, which is something they did all the time in the 80s. So it was cool that they made an exception for Gary, who loved the brand as much as anybody, probably maybe more than us. So the piece of art that I got from Jamie is everybody's well-known favorite, Rapid Fire. If you don't know who Rapid Fire is, he was a giveaway with the VHS tape that had one of the Deke era cartoons. So not only was it not a good episode of the cartoon, it was also just a flat out repaint of Super Trooper. So he has this bright green neon vest, bright green helmet, bright green gun. I still love this figure. Had Rapid Fire as a kid, used him quite a bit because he was just like, he was neon pre-neon, essentially. He was really bright and stood out. I used him a lot. So, of course, this is my MO. I love the forgotten D-list characters. So I got a great deal on him. So I was happy to have it. I mean, honestly, I would have probably accepted any character from this list just to have a piece of the history of it, And Rapid Fire is still a better choice than I can name a dozen characters on here. Almost anybody that's on the top row, like the Payne brothers are up there, like characters there's Coil Crusher, like these are some real turds. Like I wouldn't want these.
What's Candy? Is that her name?
Yeah, Candy, Bongo the Balloon Bear. I mean, that I guess has a little bit of novelty. But anyway, the point is, you and I both got a real G.I. Joe. I don't care if you think he sucks, but it's still, I got it. All right. So,
sorry, I've got one more question. I apologize. Is Bazooka that much bigger than everyone else?
No, Jamie takes a little bit of artistic licensing with these guys. So sometimes people look a little differently than what we're used to seeing it. No harm, no foul. I mean, Bazooka is an intimidating big dude, but no, he's absolutely not bigger than Sergeant Slaughter in any world that I can imagine.
I just saw like him and Roadblock, and I was like, well, Roadblock's big. And Slaughter's big, but he's like...
Yeah, he's a beast. He's not like that in any, no specific artistic envisioning that I've seen is like that. I think Jamie was just going with his gut with it. Jamie is no different than Larry. He's not expected to know every single character they pull. He's got guys that help him do research. Our good friend of the show, Dustin McCoy, is one of the people that helps him do research for it. So,
that's awesome.
I'll ask him why Bazooka's so big. So let's talk a little bit about the plot that's going on in the book right now. And then we'll talk about what actually happened in this one. This is part 5 of a story arc that's called All In. And I'm just going to give you the bullet points. Basically, Cobra has gone back to Cobra Island. They've set up a casino and they are letting regular civilians come in and gamble. And under the guise that all of the dealers are like highly advanced battle android troopers in disguise, and they've got a crazy subset of weapons that are just be unbelievably powerful. They send some Joes in to like go investigate or break it up. I'm already starting to kind of lose the thread, but they get there and there's a bunch of other shenanigans going on. Dr. Moundbender is still toying around with Serpentor DNA. They've got a plan to clone several Snake Eyes from his original DNA that they have stored in the brainwave scanner to make like an army of super ninjas. Not the first time we've heard something similar to this. And basically it starts to all kind of go pear-shaped as Serpentor is revived, but is only primarily relying on the DNA of Genghis Khan. So dubbing himself Serpentor Khan, he is basically just Genghis Khan, as I understand it, with like maybe just a sprinkling of Serpentor in there. And they also unveiled that Mindbender's been working on something as cartoonish as a mutant zombie bomb, which I assume blows up and turns people into mutant zombies. It's not clarified any further than that, but with that name, what more could you need to know? So they tease that a little bit, and then finally they reveal that, yes, we have successfully cloned Snake Eyes. He is a 1-to-1 match based on the DNA that we have, which we'll get into a minute on how old that DNA could potentially be. And he breaks out of the vat. That's the end of 299. Let's begin with issue 300. Issue 300 is an oversized issue. It breaks out. Oh, sorry. Before we begin, Jaren, if you have any questions about anything at all, you break in and we'll break it down.
Gotcha. Real quick, sorry. First question right off the bat.
Sure.
How long has the original Snake Eyes been, I guess, is he deceased or just gone?
Starting with issue 212, the death of Snake Eyes begins. And if I'm not mistaken, in 213, it's the culmination of that incident. So basically the short form is Serpentor is back again. And it's they've gone to battle, and the culmination of this battle, Snake Eyes throws himself in front of a grenade and takes Serpentor with him. He basically sacrifices himself to save Scarlet. They don't find the body, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a bit since I've read it, and so they just kind of have an empty barrel, and that's it. They drop it. There are many, many, many letters columns, like public speaking events where Larry's like, it's not a hoax, it's not a gag. Snake Eyes is not coming back from the dead. So, like, we've never heard that before, right? Okay.
Yeah, comic books.
Raise your hand if you lined up to buy The Death of Superman thinking this will be worth a lot of money in the future. So, splash page of 300. The vial, the like tube that is holding Snake Eyes is broken open. He is propping himself up with his sword. Serpentor Khan is asking, this is an exact duplicate of the original Snake Eyes, and he possesses all his memories and skills. Is he as much Snake Eyes as I am Genghis Khan? And Mindbender says, yes, he truly is. He's an accurate reconstruction based on the extensive memory files stored in the brainwave scanner. We've even replicated his fingerprints. As far as he is concerned, he has no reason to doubt that he is the original Snake Eyes. Okay, so first off, the brainwave scanner is a mysterious piece of science fiction because it constantly evolves and does stuff that we didn't know it could do prior. If it's a one-to-one replica of Snake Eyes, then I have to assume that the brainwave scanner backs up stuff constantly. And it's going to be, I can't pull the exact, memory based on these, the 140-ish issues that have come out. But I do know when the very first video we made, we were recapping like 155 to, 165, like the first trade paperback. And in that run, they put Snake Eyes in the brainwave scanner. So at the very least, at the beginning of the reboot, he was caught up from then on. And maybe I'm scrutinizing it too much. Maybe, he hasn't really missed a ton of stuff since then, other than there is someone running around with his exact memories and has a love for the same love of his life. Oh, also your apprentice got disfigured in the exact same way you did, essentially, and is wearing your outfit. So I can understand there might be some awkwardness to explain later on. But I'm going to assume that the Snake Eyes, memory-wise, is pretty caught up. It's not like they just popped him out from issue 10 when Dr. Venom first locked him in there, and he's forgotten everything since then. So Mindbender and Serpentor Khan are having a bit of a conversation with one another. They're kind of arguing about the capabilities of the brainwave scanner to lock Snake Eyes down. I mean, it goes without saying, Snake Eyes has been in the brainwave scanner probably more than anybody, and constantly defeats it. Snake Eyes kind of is unsteady on his feet. And then this is something that I sent to you right away, and regular listeners to the show will know that I am, for whatever reason, heavily involved in the Cobra use of the Nazi salute. In the early 80s books, it's used pretty regularly, maybe as much as once per issue at where we're at right now, which is around issue 16. So I was shocked to see that after, decades, I have not seen this used. Mindbender puts his fist in the air and Snake Eyes returns it. Now, eagle-eyed listeners and viewers will remember that the Cobra salute is, it's the Nazi salute. I can't think of any other way it's not, because it's like the open hand out in the air. And they've changed it here to be a closed fist because, well, it probably was less ridiculous to use a Nazi salute then than it is now. Well, flip that. Back then they thought, we'll use the Nazi salute because nobody else is using it. Nowadays, I'm like, well, so who knows what fringe group's going to pick this up and Punisher logo it, and, it'll be on every piece of unauthorized bootleg merchandise out there. So I get why they changed it, but just as an interesting nod to the continuity, it's changed to this. And this is the first time I've ever seen it like this. So I guess essentially going forward, this is what we kind of think it looks like now. Not a big point, but it's one of those little things I get caught on I'm interested in. So the very next page, Snake Eyes looks over at one of the walls or the computer bins or whatever. He sees a throwing star, and that throwing star triggers the memory of Scarlet. And wouldn't you know it, that's all it takes to snap this fool right out of it. He's our good boy Snake Eyes all over again. Could not be a less effective mad scientist. It's pitiful that this project could go wrong so quickly, and that it's not the first time that something like this has happened where he just breaks it. It was even harder the last time. There's actually multiple panels in the original book where he has to he's going through. Cobra Commander went in and shut everything down. It was supposed to be foolproof. I think at a certain point you got to be like, this is not worth it. This is probably not going to work. He's just he's got too much mental fortitude, and I find it very disappointing that that this plot point is nothing, just something that was created to be thrown away so he could become, a good guy again. Here we go. I replaced him. I fixed him. Everybody's happy. So Snake Eyes does what Snake Eyes always does. He goes John Wick on everybody. He's chopping people up. He's flipping guns around. He's just like, he cannot be stopped. We got Joes all over the place, and they're flying in. They're on the well. They've got people everywhere. Duke and Scarlet, Stalker, Wild Bill, they're all on this C-130 that's kind of like doing laps around Cobra Island, waiting for extraction. They get on the Cobra Command communications, and Scarlet overhears that Mindbender brought the real Snake Eyes back. She's like, I got to get down there. She drops out of the plane. So I'm going to break in again and say, this is not the real Snake Eyes. It's a clone of Snake Eyes. He may have the memories, but he wasn't there for those memories. This is a new body. I mean, I know it's hard to debate. This is a comic book toy podcast, and debating the logistics of cloning is abstract at best, but it's a shocking way to write that Scarlet would be completely dismissive of the fact that somewhere there is a corpse of the person you loved and spent life with, but you're okay with this one just replacing him, essentially. Just out with the old and in with the new. A new, clean model.
Just takes less work.
I guess if I was going to no-prize it, I could say that it gives some, she's in shock, or she's just, hasn't worked through the trauma yet, and so she's just this is a coping mechanism, but it doesn't read very well for me. There's too much acceptance. I lived in the G.I. Joe world, and somebody said there's a clone of Snake Eyes. I'd say, hook that guy up to the G.I. Joe brainwave scanner and make sure he's okay, because it's got to be a trap otherwise, right? In the jungle, we've got a bunch of stuff going on where there's people escaping, there's people trying to break in, Joes and Cobras are fighting. Throwdown, a.k.a. Snake Eyes V2, a.k.a. Sean Collins, is escaping with Laura 343, which is the female Crimson Guard that has been kind of flip-flopping for the last, I don't know, at least since Snake Hunt started. And she is helping him escape from the facility at the same time that Sean's father, Wade, who is one of the long-range recon patrol officers that served with Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Stalker, obviously. And he was kind of on their patrol. That's his origin. Never mind the fact, of course, that this man served in Vietnam and he looks 20 years younger than me. But he came to the island to help Sean. But he gets kind of roped in with Storm Shadow, again, his Vietnam buddy. And they are working together to kind of help the extraction. They're fighting it towards the conflict, essentially. So Scarlet and Stalker are parachuting in at the same time that Snake Eyes is fighting through all the guards that are in this underground facility. There's a pretty wild shot where Snake Eyes has disarmed an alley viper. He's fighting with a sword and the shield, and he decapitates a night viper with the shield, which is pretty hardcore. Dope. Yeah, it's not something that I'm used to seeing. So I got a kind of a little giddy violence scheme out of it. So another big full-page panel where Snake Eyes is basically running a gun and striking a pose. It's supposed to be a big iconic, here's your boy, and he's back and he's mad. Scarlet and Stalker team up with the whale, which has gone onto the ground. So they have all kind of come together. Laura and Throwdown, I'm going to call him Throwdown so we don't confuse him with other Snake Eyes. They also make it to the well, so everybody's there. Oh, and also Dawn and Cobra Commander have made it there as well. Dawn and Cobra Commander had been taken hostage by Serpentor Khan. They were able to escape. They don't show how, although I don't really know that that's an important beat. So everybody's all together now. They finish off the rest of the Cobra Troopers that are there, and now everybody's on the same page that they're ready to go back and help exfiltrate Snake Eyes. There's some stuff with the Blue Ninjas in here, aka Revenge Robotics. They're the super AI smart robots that have been messing with them for the last few years. And we're not going to talk about them because they're not good and I don't like them. I don't know how you probably haven't read enough to get a feel for them, but
I was just who is this? Is this the Michael Bay Soundwave? That's who I thought it was. Not
only do I find that it's not written very well, I find them to be an unnecessary combatant in most of these books. And they also have power levels that are wildly fluctuating. In the beginning, you couldn't take them out with a tactical nuke. Nowadays, if you just shoot the right rivet, it seems like they explode on sight. So I don't like that inconsistency, and just in general, I don't care for them at all. I don't really know anybody that thinks it's a good idea, but I'm willing to believe that everything in G.I. Joe has fans, even maybe they're just not very vocal. If that's your thing, more power to you. I'm coming off very critique heavy of this book, but I love it still. I enjoy reading it. So don't take this picking apart as being truly negative. I'm really just kind of expressing, I had a lot of built up hype for this book. So I'm really just kind of breaking down the stuff that where my expectations were and where I feel like they fall short a little bit. So the Battle Android Troopers, which all kind of look like schoolgirls, I've never seen a casino dealer that really looks like this, but I've also not really been to a lot of casinos. They are also on the playing field. They've engaged. These bats are kind of too similar to Revanche for me. They're just like, they unfold guns from every crevice, and they're just like a walking arsenal. It just doesn't stack up for me. They're just a little bit too powerful. Laura tells the Joes that she knows kind of a secret way to get into the casino that, only a Cobra operative would know. So the whale rolls out with every other combatant, combined. As Snake Eyes is still, basically, he's made his way to the, ground floor of the lab. He's almost ready to break out. The whale blasts the doors in. Scarlet pops out of the little driver's seat area, and she's like, Snake Eyes, your face. We see the back of Snake Eyes' face, his blonde hair, and Snake Eyes speaks, in a rare instance. He says Scarlet's name, the very first thing we've ever heard him say in the original Marvel run. She puts a hand to his cheek and says, don't say another word. Big full-page panel where they're hugging, and again, his face is obscured. This is a pretty clever play because we will not learn is Snake Eyes' face healed? Can Snake Eyes speak? Or is there something else going on? Jaren, do you have an opinion on which way you think this is leaning, and which way do you think you would prefer?
To me, it's like this is like the Theseus's ship paradox. Like, how many parts of, if you take everything away from Snake Eyes, is it still Snake Eyes?
That's a great analogy.
I don't know. Is it really Snake Eyes if it's just implanted, or is this just some random dude who had his life hijacked? Was the guy, I don't know. No, so sorry, to answer your question. It'd be nice, I think, if they just yada yada'd it and were like, well, no, this is now Snake Eyes. Let's just forget about the corpse of the other one. It's like James Bond in movies. He's more of a thing than...
Yeah, it's more of a title than a single dude.
Yeah, but it's just... It's hard for me because I went from having a single Snake Eyes who never talks to now apparently there's 3 different flavors of Snake Eyes. And it's... I don't know. I would like to see his face, I think, and hear him talk. But then again, we already have a Snake Eyes who talks. So
my science fiction feel on it is that if you clone Snake Eyes using original DNA, there's no reason he would be disfigured. There's no reason he can't speak. That stuff should all be intact, essentially. So I would be, Throwdown is a perfect example of a character that was like, you know what, I'm going to take on the helm of Snake Eyes. He trained me. I could do the job. And then immediately is like, oh no, I've been disfigured in a comically critical way that very similarly mimics Snake Eyes. So now I can't even talk or take off my mask. So maybe people will forget that I'm not Snake Eyes, which they toy around with for a bit where he's supposed to be posing as Snake Eyes. But I feel like that has run its course. I will be very disappointed if that happens in the new book, if he gets immediately disfigured again. It's okay for him to be able to talk and choose not to, I think, which is how they played off, and I've seen that in at least one of the versions where he has like a vow of silence. Yeah, he has a vow of silence in the movie. So yeah, I'll be a bit let down if he doesn't have it. And his face has been fixed before. He had surgery once. Of course, that got undone. He got cut at a diagonal across his face. So I'd like to see old Snake clean him up and let him get out into town for a little bit for once. So everybody's together, and we got big, it looks like a big happy ending winding up. So Pintor Khan is like, well, this is out of control. I guess I'm just going to set off this mutant zombie bomb that you showed me like an idiot. So As we wind down, the C-130 takes some fire from one of the super bats on a rocket pack. It starts to take a nosedive. They've got backup in the back, like the Wolverine is back there with Cover Girl, Lady J, Jinx, Roadblock. They're all ready to go like boots on the ground and add backup. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen because they're getting ready to crash directly into the Cobra Casino if Wild Bill can't find a safer place to land. And then Serpentor Khan, of course, is just like, yeah, I'm going to trigger this bomb. And Mindbender's like, well, you can't do that. You're insane. And Genghis Khan, or Serpentor Khan, is like, well, yeah, you should have thought about that before you resurrected me. So you're 0 for 2, Mindbender. If we looked at your total track record, I think only the clone of yourself was the successful one. So you really got to go back to the drawing board. It really makes you miss Dr. Venom, a man that was capable with his science at all times. As the C-130, you see a big shot of the Cobra Casino in the final panel, and it's like looming in. Wild Bill says, there may be pockets of hydraulic fluid trapped by air bubbles. If one breaks free, we might be able to get enough traction to pull out. Duke yells, might, and Wild Bill says, that's still 100% better than not a chance in hell, pard. Big final panel at the very bottom, it, of course, says, to be continued, ? So, not what I was expecting by a long shot. Definitely I was expecting a bit of a conclusion, especially if we know that comic books are solicited like 3 months in advance. So we know for sure there will be no G.I. Joe comics, a bare minimum, for the next 3 months. And realistically, it's going to be even longer than that because they haven't even announced anything yet. So I hope that it won't take, I hope we don't have to wait until the end of May to get the announcement. I hope it comes sooner rather than later, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of disappointment with this book overall. I really was expecting something completely different, and I would have liked to have seen some sort of resolution. And it was a double-sized issue. It has a lot of full-page spreads. I feel like they almost were going for filler to a certain sense. But it's not a bad read. It just didn't do what I wanted it to do. And that doesn't make it a bad comic. It just makes me specifically feel, I'm longing for something else. Jaren, what are your overall thoughts on the book as a whole? And also, I'd like to go from that to, what are you hoping the new license looks like? Do you want it to just be this book continuing? I had heard a rumor that they might do a separate book that will not be connected to the Real American continuity. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I think when we had first started talking about, when we covered the news that 300 was going to be it, or, that was the announcement at least, I think probably in the minority that I was excited that it was going to be wrapping up. I mean, Larry doesn't owe us anything. If he wants to continue, more power to him. Larry should be able to write it as long as he wants to write it. But I was kind of excited by the fact that, hey, maybe I might get to join on to something new and get to experience it. I was a little disappointed. It feels like I should pick up 301 next week and, just keep going. It didn't feel like a wrap up. And I get that it's just a transition from different publishers, but when you do that, business gets involved and you always run the risk of something not happening. What if, the new publisher wants to be more hands-on and doesn't want to allow Larry to do what he wants to do, and Larry decides it's not worth it, and then we have this cliffhanger that will hang over us forever, probably. If they do a secondary book, I might jump on it and let Real American Hero, or let this series keep going and pass me by, and we just jump onto something new. I think it's really good, but maybe I'll catch up in a couple years as we work our way up from, what are we on, 15, 16?
Yeah. I agree with all that. The only negative I have to say about starting a new continuity is simply that it's a long-term investment, because you are building a universe from scratch, and even if it's characters we recognize, they are likely being written in a way that we are not used to. So the first year or two, they're still kind of introducing characters. You're still kind of getting a feel for how this universe is going to play out. It's time consuming, and it seems very unlikely that they're going to continue to. The IDW continuity, I feel, is dead. They couldn't keep it going. Revolution kind of crashed it So I don't think there's any chance of that being revived. Paul Aller's 2019 G.I. Joe run, which is kind of set in a future where Cobra won and G.I. Joe are the rebels fighting back from within the shadows, is a very great and very, very good read. And I felt was cut short prematurely. I think there's still a lot of life in that book. And that is the one continuity that if it continued, I'd be happy. I think that book had a lot of good stories to tell. And I think Paul is an excellent writer in the G.I. Joe universe. And I appreciate that the hard work he put into it, I think, paid off. He had to do a lot of research. I know it. And it shows. And he was able to take that research and confidently adapt it into something that was fresh and original for people to read. Failing that, I mean, I don't know. The only thing I would like to see from a new continuity is an exceptional writing and artist team that hopefully can stay on the book kind of consistently for a while. But, that's still pretty far way out. As far as the Real American Hero book, I want things to be a little bit more unpredictable like they were in the Marvel book. I say that, but I guess, I don't know. There are some instances in the Marvel book where I was like, Joe would get killed off, which was unheard of the first half of the series, really. Famously, Cobra Commander getting shot and Fred Seven taking his place as Cobra Commander for a stretch, which is wild, and it was one of my favorite runs to read. So, in my head, I thought, wouldn't it be great if they get this Snake Eyes back to base and it turns out he still is brainwashed, like he is a corrupt agent and it's all a ploy for them to take him in? I think that would be a great plot twist. What I don't want is for Snake Eyes to come back and then be like, well, this is it. Just launch him in, because time and time again, it's shown that Snake Eyes is, basically a Wolverine, the Wolverine. Nothing can stop him and he rarely gets slowed down. He has no matched foil since Storm Shadow became a good guy. So I do miss that time. That's the one thing I really don't like about Snake Eyes coming back, is that he just has too far reaching of a power level.
He's the ex machina for Joe's. Like, no matter how bad it gets, if you have, even in the issues we're reading, everything looks bad, but, we have Snake Eyes. He's fine.
So as we wrap up the discussion of 300, I just want to say that it was not what I expected by far, and I am still kind of working through it. This is by far the issue that I have reread the most since it's come out. I just am really scrutinizing it, and I'm going to go back and probably read the last 2 years again, because I do sometimes have a habit of I read comics very quickly because I'm excited to find out what happens, and I don't really pay attention to the details overall. So I'm interested in rereading, key runs of this series again and kind of enjoying them, in the dead time while we wait to see what's going to happen next. I had already been rereading some old IDW stuff from their alternate continuity, and I was surprised at how much I think I enjoyed it even more now, because I didn't have that standard that I was expecting of it. And when you read it with low, no expectations, because I already know all the major plot points, I was surprised at how much it really pulled me in. There's a lot of really great technical research that goes into it. So it felt in a real sense like a Larry book. I was always like, their pit is powered by a portable tactical nuke, and Cobra breaks in and tries to detonate it. It was all really good stuff. It was all believable to me, an idiot. So I'm looking forward to see what the future holds for the comic, and I'm happy that it had a good run at IDW, and I appreciate all the hard work they put into it. There were definitely a lot of people that truly loved the brand that got to work on it, and I'm glad for those experiences. Now, having wrapped that up, we have just enough time to do one little extra section. I think based on my mail the last week and a half, it's going to have to be recent acquisitions.
Recent acquisitions.
Welcome to Recent Acquisitions. Man, it has been a wild time to be a G.I. Joe collector, especially if you're lower middle class like I am. I have spent, legitimately struggling to get the basic stuff paid for, because so much stuff is hitting simultaneously. Stuff that when I pre-ordered was like, I'll take 2 of everything, because I tried to get one open and one unopened. It's a pretty normal standing, if you're a heavy collector, you probably like to collect one of each. Well, I can't do that anymore. And I certainly couldn't do it with Serpentor and Mindbender, which were both deluxe, limited editions, popping in at, the $70, around the $70 price point. As a matter of fact, I was declined for my Serpentor because I did not have the money in the bank, and got paid in the window that enabled me to be like, hey, try again. It was just a fluke on your end. Probably not that I'm exceptionally poor. And it went then. I lost those Target pre-orders. I had them on pre-order for a full year. They charge you every freaking 3 or 4 days. Well, the money, they put the money in. I spent the money forgetting that they were going to hit it again. It hit again. They immediately were like, finally, we can cancel them. And these guys, I don't know why they were so adamant about tricking people into cancel, because now we're starting to see them like Tiger Force Outback wave everywhere. I was able to order one from Target, and I received it in 2 days. Like, that just happened. So I was mad that I had dealt with this pending charge for a full year, only to lose it in the last, week before it actually finally shipped. But I was able to get them anyway, so no harm, no foul, I guess. Will not ever go that route again. I'll never pre-order from Target in that way. It was very, very inconvenient. But I got them now, so it's all good. So let's talk about... I'll try to back up as far as I can remember since this stuff started hitting. The first thing I can remember is that I got recently that I know we haven't talked about is the Megatron Baroness Transformer G.I. Joe mashup. And I could also speak to the Bumblebee Stalker mashup because I have both of those. Did you purchase either one of these?
I did not.
Well, you didn't really miss anything. I spoke about this when we looked at the early reveal, but I'm not a big Transformers guy, and I really don't like Transformers that aren't in scale with G.I. Joe, and unfortunately, really aren't any. Now, I understand the limitation of that is a Megatron that's in scale with G.I. Joe would be probably 3 times the size of what we got. I don't care. That's what I want. This Megatron is a good build, transforms into the Hiss tank, and is smoothly designed. Like, the architect behind it is very solid. The Bumblebee is as well. I will never transform them. I will never play with them. They're not the right scale. That's the bottom line for me, is that I just can't accept how small they are. It doesn't work for me. It especially doesn't work because I don't understand Transformers at all, but Megatron is supposed to turn into a Hiss tank, but he can also turn into a gun. How? Where do the rest of the parts go? Is he a shapeshifter? Transformers mythology is weird. So those two sets are, again, very well done, but just do not appeal to me. And I don't know, in the future, I'm going to have to be a little bit more selective. I don't think I want to buy them all. That Bumblebee turning into an All-Striker seems like a weird flex because the color contrast is significant. I would have rather the Bumblebee just been painted green instead of yellow, just so it looked normal. But I got them anyway, and a big part of the reason I wanted them was because they both come with a on-card vintage G.I. Joe that they're not selling individually at this time. There's a Baroness with Megatron, there's a Stalker with All-Striker, and these figures are kind of growing on me as I've got them. At first I was like, they're just not the same because the plastic is different essentially, and obviously that plastic is never coming back, and probably for the better if you look at my vintage collection, which just disintegrates in front of my eyes if I stare at it sometimes too hard. So it's taken me a little bit to get over the fact that these are essentially an adaptation of the style, not the physicality. They're not going to feel the same. They don't smell like the same figures. They have differences, but I'm starting to learn to love them regardless. There's some quality control issues that I think can be addressed, but I'm not disappointed in this line. It can continue. The only way I would want this line to end is if it meant the modern G.I. Joe molds were coming back in any capacity. But so as he goes now, at the very least, they come out sporadically enough that it's not a huge issue, as long as they're not all $100 Transformer crossovers. So yeah, pretty mixed feelings about that. Haven't really messed with them much, and I probably won't. I'm probably done with it. In the classified run, I mean, it's just been an onslaught. We got, the last time we talked classified, we were talking about importing, exporting that Stalker, those Tomax and Zamots, which I don't regret. They started shipping to everybody else maybe a month and a half later. But I didn't overpay, so I'm not mad. Likewise, I overpaid for that Tiger Force Outback, and I'm definitely not upset about that because I use that figure all the time. I legitimately just have that figure around just to goof off with. And then, like I said, I was able to get one off the Target website, and it showed up right away because I love Outback. I did want this one to be in the box. People have got a lot of negative feelings about the all cardboard box. Basically, the art just takes up the front. And, because I buy one to open and I buy one to keep closed, it really doesn't bother me that much. The ones that stay unopened now, I'm like, great, I get a bigger canvas for the art, which I am a fan of. Yeah, that doesn't bother me. So anyway, I got another Tiger Force Outback because I like the art and I wanted to have one unopened. at the same time, a lot of the like con exclusives have all started to arrive. I got my Sergeant Slaughter, I got my Serpentor, I got my Dr. Mindbender, my Crimson Guards have already arrived. They got here pretty early. And as of this recording, my Zorana and my Dusty will be here on Wednesday, which I'm very excited for that Zorana and have been for quite a while. I don't think I'm missing anything. Jaren, out of that lot, what have you got? Oh, that Python Patrol, which actually, if you want to speak on, because I know you feel way stronger, please do.
I got all of those you mentioned with the exception of Crimson Guard because I ordered from one place, the other place got it in sooner, so then I canceled my original order and ordered from the second place. They decided that I wasn't allowed to have them early like everyone else, so now I'm just waiting on the Crimson Guards, but it's fine. It's helped my wallet anyway. I was in the same boat, man. I made the mistake of buying 2 Serpentors and Mindbenders, and I was like, this is dumb. Luckily,
Cha-ching.
one of my friends wasn't able to get one, so I was able to hook them up. Gave it to him for what I paid for it, felt good about myself, pat myself on the back a little bit, and was, out, not in a sunk cost of $130 or whatever. But the Python Patrol Bat and Viper both showed up just in the last couple days. And I know that you might not, I don't know if you love them or don't, but I absolutely adore them. I think give me every repaint of those both of those characters. I will buy every single one. You want to do an Ice Cream Viper? You want to do an Ice Cream Bat? Let's go ahead. Let's do it. Eco Warriors, go ahead. Whatever team you want to put on there, whatever coloration you want to do, I'm there for it. Use those molds and I'm buying them.
I do not like the Python Patrol repaints. I don't know what it is about them.
They don't like you, Greg.
Well, good. I bought one of each with no plans to open, just to kind of keep the collection complete up to this point. I want to get one of everything, but it's easier for me to go, no, I'm not going to open these. If I'm bulk collecting any troopers, I want it to be the regular standard fare, and even that's a struggle. Did you buy multiples of those, or did you just buy one of each?
I bought 2 of each.
Okay, so that's pretty reasonable.
The way in my universe, they're going to be like specialty ones. They're not going to be a whole team, but just like, their own little specialty versions. If you need somebody to do reconnaissance in the jungle, you're going to have your Python Patrols.
The Python Patrol doesn't have a ton of representation. They were in the comic around 87 or 88. They use them for just a pinch. And in the start of the Deke run, the only really good episodes that come out of the Deke run, in my opinion, is Operation Dragonfire, I think is the correct title. It was a 5-parter where they find some kind of weird technology and they ancient alien device left behind in a tomb, and it pythonizes their suits or something like that. It's been a while since I've watched it, but those are really the only 2 times you see Python Patrol used in any like impactful instance. So there's plenty of room to play around with what it does, how it works, who's on it. The bats have not been pythonized in the modern continuity, so it's nice to see them like kind of branching out a little bit.
Yeah, the only thing that I changed about my bat is I changed the chest plate. I put the regular black chest plate.
I remember you talking about that.
And then I switched one of the heads onto a regular bat to see how that looked. It looked okay. I switched it back.
So, of the stuff that you got in, tell me, we'll just speak as a whole since we've covered what we have picked up. What are your highlights? Any disappointments? What's your overall feeling on all the stuff that we've just gotten in?
Don't get me wrong. I love the figures. For what I like about it, Serpentor or Mindbender probably won't be used very much. I didn't open any of the accessories for Mindbender just because I was like, well, I mean, he's a scientist and I like more of the shooty and the pew pew and the bangs, and so he's not going to be utilized a whole lot, but I think they nailed it, from the little bit I do know. It seems like everybody's having issues with the elbows on the Serpentor. I've seen some people. So if you are listening to this and you're planning on opening your Serpentor, heat up those elbow joints. I've seen way too many people, unfortunately, have them snap. Just go ahead and do it. Or take a blow dryer to it or something. They're a little tight, and it'd be better than breaking it in half.
Mine actually has extra plastic in the elbow, so when I bent it, there's like a small block that sticks out of almost like he's got like a little blade that pops out of his elbow. I have not attempted to address it at all at this point because I'm nervous about trying to shave it down, but it is very distracting to look at. Having said that, I think, Mindbender, Serpentor, and the Sarge are all AAA hits. Everything that I've looked at since Tiger Force Outback, I've just been like, these are exceptionally well done, and they nailed it. I mean, like, I don't know if they could have done it any better. If I'm talking cons first, and I guess I will, I don't like Serpentor's hood. You know, he has an interchangeable one, and both of them don't really stack up. I am using the vintage figure for reference, but that snake hood on the back I feel like it's supposed to be a lot larger, and on the classified figure, it's very minimal. It almost looks like it shrank in the wash, and it just doesn't look right. I think it would maybe even look better to just not have it at all, but that's not really an option, unfortunately. The Mindbender figure, which again I think is a AAA hit, has the paint rub from the cape. Apparently, it seems like a 100% fail rate based on the people that I've talked to. When you move the cape from where it's at on the figure, it has left behind black paint or like some kind of like something has rubbed off on his shoulders. And I went to Twitter and asked, people what's working and what's not. And there's been some varied results, enough that I have not decided, I'm afraid if I put something like Goo Gun on it, it might take the paint off of his actual shoulder and then I'll be left with nothing. So I'm trying to play it safe. I might just start washing and see where it goes, or I might just give up to fate and be like, well, see, he had a tattoo and got it removed and this is what's left.
After reading this issue 300, we need a Serpentor Con head swap. Maybe that'll fix it all.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually like to see that. I'm a nut for I want a figure for everybody. And when I was a kid, it was always the trifecta. I was a Quinn, a Billy, a Dr. Venom. We never got them. I always wanted them forever and ever and ever. I honestly didn't think we'd ever see them. But thanks to the modern line, a lot of that stuff got actualized, which was a big deal for me. So Serpentor Con, technically is a new variation of a character. And it's pretty simple when you think about it. I just need somebody with a beard and a full head of, long hair that I can cram in a Serpentor helmet, and you're done. But yeah, it would be nice to see if some people comes up with some 3D printed models of that. I'd be on it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Back to the other figures, I have no notes on the Sarge. I was really, really pleased with that Sergeant Slaughter figure. When I started breaking him out and was like, oh, his hat is a separate piece. And I was like, wait a minute, even his glasses are a separate piece. I mean, like every little detail, they took the time to mold individually so you could basically dress him as you wanted. Sarge has always got glasses on, so it's wild that I could actually have him kind of like taking them off, pointing at somebody. He's got all those great interchangeable hands. Really a great example of what a mid-range deluxe figure should look like, right? He doesn't come with a vehicle like Serpentor. He doesn't really have a ton of accessories unless you count the stuff that he's wearing. So everything that came with him seemed like essential stuff, like the baton, the hands that allow him to like point or hold or punch. It gives him a lot. You can do a lot with that Sarge figure, and I love it. I did pick up an extra Sarge because he was, in the cheaper range for, a low-level deluxe. And it's even though I've met the Sarge before, this is something that I would like for him to sign. And I mean, the pros are across the board. They all look great. Serpentor's Air Chariot is phenomenal. Mindbender's accessories, I kind of agree with you. I didn't pop them out of the box because I didn't really know where I would put them. I'm not exactly, at this point, I'm not building a diorama for classified figures. I barely have anywhere to put them as is. Like, I barely have somewhere for them to stand single file with every other classified figure that I've opened. And now I don't open everything. Like, I only keep one open Snake Eyes. I don't want a bunch of the same character. So I pick the one that I like, and if a superior version comes out, I usually just like yeet that old one to my kid who will eat it or dismantle it immediately.
So which Snake Eyes? That's an interesting question to derail us, to get us down a rabbit hole for a second.
The Snake Eyes that I'm using is still the very first Snake Eyes.
Okay.
I think that, the Snake Eyes has a lot of variations because Snake Eyes has a lot of outfits, and I do think the one that comes with Timber is probably technically the best one, but I didn't feel so strongly about it that I felt compelled to open it, because that was another one that I only bought one of, and I am a lot more hesitant to open stuff like that. I mean, it happens because eventually it gets to a point where I have no more room and I have to start opening stuff. I've actually been opening stuff this week, probably a whole segment into itself where we just talk about some random thing that I'm like, you know what? It's time to open this. And I pull out a G.I. Joe Extreme vehicle that's still in the box. And I'm like, why? This is not going to go up in value. Just open it up and find something to do with it. So really happy with all the classified stuff that's coming out. I think all the gripes I have are minor. Even though it's put me in a crazy position financially, I guess I still prefer this to pre-order it and then wait a year. Like, I'm so excited that Zarana will be here on Wednesday. Really, one of the only announced figures that I've just been really clamoring to get my hands on. And after the wave of all this other great stuff I've just gotten, I mean, I have pretty high expectations for getting her out of the box and being able to pose her with all the rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anything else about Classified?
Not that I can think of. I feel like I'm missing something, but I can't see anything here around me that I've picked up G.I. Joe related that has been recent.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add at the end here is that I did get the Sergeant Slaughter Funko Pop. That was the 2022 Fall Convention. I got that through GameStop and it came in yesterday. I know Funko Pop is a divide. You either love them or hate them. But, that's the type of G.I. Joe. I collected Funko Pops for a long time. I still have a choice selection of certain properties, but I'm buying all the G.I. Joe ones because I like them, and they don't really put them out in regular waves. They just, here and there, they'll hit with one, so it's not very hard to collect. And they're cheaper than, I don't think you could buy anything G.I. Joe related that's a toy for $10.99 other than those failed movie figures.
I used to be a pop collector, but whew.
Yeah, I got rid of a lot of that stuff, but I kept a couple that I was like sentimentally attached to, or that I had completed. My Mission Critical box set came in. That's the Renegade Studio card game, and I had gone all in on that. So it was the base game. There's miniatures to paint. There's an expansion set. I say card game, but it's actually a board game, but it's not not to be confused with the role playing like D&D style game. This is a cooperative card playing game that also has miniatures, and I am very excited to play it. I don't know when that will happen because I'll have to sit down and learn it. I do have to go out and make new friends. All difficult things. Both of those things are very challenging for me, so I don't know how long it'll be till I get around to getting it, but I wanted to support them, and I wanted to have it, just so I could start learning it, and if the opportunity arose to play it, I'd be ready. And I think that's it. I'm basically caught up, and I'm optimistic that after this wave of figures comes out this week, with the exception of the Sky Striker, which, if you haven't heard, has already arrived internationally, is starting to show up. People have it now. There are pictures of it being taken out of the box. I'm very excited for that because I paid it off already. So bring that bad boy on. On top of that, the fine gentleman over at RoboSkull just announced that the add-on they had announced, which is like these little mini Skeletron drones that he sends out like spiders and they analyze stuff. Those are already back from the factory. They already have them in the States, and they said, we're not going to make you guys wait. Here's a little taste of something that you can enjoy while you wait for the RoboSkull. I actually will have to go and look at my Kickstarter to see if I have it as an add-on, because I think it's also included. And I don't want to buy it a second time just to get it early. I will just wait until the RoboSkull actually ships. And you talk about something else that I'm excited about that I already have paid off. It's that bad boy. I will, when we start getting reports that that's going to start shipping, buddy, it's all I'm going to be talking about on this show. I cannot wait to get my hands on that thing. But that's then, and this is now. We want to thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us today. If you have thoughts on issue 300, I don't know if I'll ever be done talking about it. You can hit me up on Twitter at Anything Joe's Pod. You can talk to Jaren about it on Anything Joe's Pod on Instagram. You can also find us on YouTube at Anything Joe's, and of course, you're listening to us on your podcaster of choice right now. Oh, and you can email us at anythingjoespod@gmail.com or anythingjoespodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you there as well. If you'd like to hear me talk more about G.I. Joe number 300, then tune your eyes no further than the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod with our good friend Gary. Gary invited myself, Jason from Order of Battle, of course, everybody's favorite Stephen Jubber from G.I. Joe Berg, to sit in with him and, talk about the logistics of 300, the pros and cons, the highs and lows. And it's a pretty substantially different conversation than what we just had here. So listen to me argue with other people about these points. It actually was a great recording. I had a tremendous amount of fun talking to those guys. I have never been able to record Steven before, and because I have a tremendous amount of respect and enjoyment for G.I. Joe Berg, that was a pretty big thrill for me. We'll be back in 2 short weeks with Marvel's G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero number 16. If number 300 left a bad taste in your mouth, then journey back with us in time when things were toot sweet, where Dr. Venom is returning to Cobra at the exact same time that Cobra Commander is hoping to eliminate Destro. So backstabbing aplenty. And I'm looking forward to covering it like I always am. And I hope you're looking forward to listening to it with us. So we'll see you in 2 short weeks, where anything's available for discussion here on Anything Joe.